Okay, we are live. All right. I don't anticipate anyone will be in the chat just yet. Oh, we got two people. If anything, this is for the people who are going to watch this back at a later date. I'm just going to give the chat a couple minutes to fill up. I'm not sure how many we're going to have today, but it gives me a moment just to let the chat fill, get some people in the stream, and also get the fight card up because I'll be going through the fights. I don't want to miss any out. Okay. All right, I'm back in the room, people. I was just checking to make sure my audio was okay. Can you guys give me a thumbs up in the chat or a message if all is well? Because I'm getting some Wi-Fi warnings. I don't know if that's impacting the stream. If so, I can move to a different room or something. Okay. All right. Cheers, Dave. I'm going to assume it's all good then. As I say, I might just give it another minute. I just need to grab myself a drink as well. I'm not feeling too well, but I'm going to try and get this one done and dusted. So just bear with me, folks. Okay, let's get this show on the road. So, as I say, I don't know how long this stream's going to go on for. I'm just going to basically give my thoughts on the card from yesterday. More so as a means of saving time. I don't know how many of you guys I'm going to be able to engage with because it's a bit of an awkward time. It's 10 o'clock in the morning on Christmas Eve. I'm sure people have better things to do than listen to me. But I'm going to save some time as well. And time is money, of course. All right. So, as I say, I'll be going through the whole card. Just disclaimer, I will not be covering the Filip Hrgović Mark Demori fight for two reasons. Firstly, I actually missed it. That was the only fight on the card that I missed. And I don't think that's really of much consequence because it was the most pointless fight on the card. So Junior Farr versus Frank Sanchez. I was very impressed by Frank Sanchez. I've always liked Frank Sanchez. I'm definitely one of the people who think that he is a legit player in the division, despite the fact that he's apparently 31, close to 51, I think. But he's definitely got some ability. I know he looked a little bit shaky in his, I think it's not last night, the fight before that. But see, the thing is, if you have potentially shaky punch resistance, like Frank Sanchez may, you have to make up for it by other means. You need to either have serious firepower to intimidate your opponent, or you need to have great defense. And I think Frank Sanchez has a little bit of both. It was a bit of I don't want to say strange fight. It was interesting because Junior Farr came out and he was looking to assert his dominance. He wasn't reckless at all, but he was just looking to be the ring general. And Frank Sanchez had no problem moving around, retreating, and kind of finding his time and biding his time a little bit. I can't remember exactly which round it was, but the Frank Sanchez dropped Junior Farr heavily. I think with a right hand, he shot a jab low to the body, came over the top with a right hand, and down Junior Farr went. Now, Junior Farr is no stranger to the canvas. Of course, he got stopped by Lucas Brown. Is that last year? And that was a bad stoppage. You know, he was doing the stanky leg and all sorts. But yeah, this was really just as soon as Frank Sanchez, I don't know why I struggled to say his name so much. As soon as Sanchez settled down, found his timing, and realized that Junior Farr can only get out of the way for so long, he started to connect and did so with a lot of sharpness. Frank Sanchez, he's not a small guy, you know, he's 240-ish pounds, 6'4", I think. But he's sharp and he's quick as well. The Cuban Flash is a very fitting name because this guy, he's quick, but he's not. He's quick, but he maintains his construct, his composure. You know, he's not one of these quick guys who goes a bit wild and a bit ragged. There's a certain amount of precision that you get with Sanchez, and I really like that. So, yeah, he stops Junior Farr in round 7. I was very impressed. I'd be surprised if Sanchez doesn't score a major upset over one of the top names. I think he's got a very good chance of beating Usyk, Fury, Joshua. I suspect that he's probably going to do better against those bigger guys because I think with Usyk or someone, with Usyk, it's going to be difficult because Usyk might be able to match or might just be superior in terms of coordination. You know, sometimes when you're a fighter like Frank Sanchez, you can have the upper hand against a bigger guy. Kind of like what we saw in Michael Hunter's career, where he seemed to do better against the bigger guys because he just had a speed advantage, he had a coordination advantage, a skill advantage. I suspect the same will be the same for Frank Sanchez. So yeah, I was very impressed with him. Congratulations to Frank Sanchez on scoring a big win because this is really what he needed, because he really had his defining moment against F.A. Ajagba, which was it's like over 2 years ago now, and he hasn't really captured that momentum. I'd make the argument, I know other people do as well, that F.A. Ajagba has actually been on a slightly better trajectory of incremental step-ups since the Frank Sanchez fight. So it's good to see Frank Sanchez kind of in the mix on a big card fighting. Yeah, Junior Farr is not a great opponent, but it's a start, you know. It'd be interesting to see what the next step is. But excuse me. Sorry about that. As I say, I'm still a little bit ill, so if the mic gets muted, I am probably just coughing up. But right, next one. Just bear with me, guys. Just going to address the chat. So we've still got Dave in the house. He seriously enjoyed the card from last night. Yeah. Other than the Hrgovic-Damori fight, because the only reason I missed that really was just because I was going from mine to my missus' house, and obviously I think that fight was over in a round or two. Yeah, 1 round, so hardly a fight, and it wasn't really anything on paper anyway. We got Reese as well. He says, "Morning Outmatch, hope you're well." Yeah, I'm not doing too bad, man. I'm slowly getting better. Just trying to chill out a little bit. Reese, I hope you're doing well as well, mate. Merry Christmas as well to anyone who's celebrating. Yeah, Dave says terrible fight, that one. Yeah, I mean it was, what was it, a run out for Hergovic. One thing I say about that was that in the lead up, like over fight week, Hergovic looked quite amped. You know, he looked like he was up for the fight, and it was ironic seeing as he's been in against Zhang last year and last time out against Dempsey McKean, who are head and shoulders above Mark Demori, but Hergovic looked kind of, I don't know, nonplussed, a bit lackadaisical. But then as soon as he fights Mark Demori, who's basically a complete pie in comparison, he's like super up for the fight. And I know there were some things probably going on in his personal life, but it was just, I just found it ironic. The next fight I caught was, I think, Jay Opataya versus Ellis Zorro. Yeah, on paper, this was going to be a whitewashing. If Ellis Zorro had won, this would have been a massive upset. And, you know, there were obviously some circumstances going into the fight where the fight wasn't sanctioned by the IBF, so Jay Opataya had to vacate. And it wasn't the kind of opponent you'd want for Opataya. However, I see it for what happens and what it's worth. This really was what Opataya should be doing against this level of opposition. So yeah, even though we didn't necessarily learn anything in terms of, oh, Opataya's match slightly tougher, we're going to learn a bit more about him, what his ability is like. He dealt with Zorro the way he should have. So I don't think you can really criticize Opataya too much. It's not like he labored to a stoppage or labored to a points victory, or, you know, God forbid he lost. Opataya dealt with Zorro exactly the way he should. And so it's still an indicator of, okay, Opataya is that guy, it seems. Because a lot of people are rating him as the best at cruiserweight. I tend to believe he is, but obviously he still has to prove it. You know, I'm not interested in, oh, Opataya's looked really good in the fights that we've seen, therefore he's the best. You can suspect he is, but he still has to go out there, clean up the division, beat whoever, you know, Chris Billum-Smith, Goulamarian is his name, I think, Badu Jack, Lawrence Okoli. You know, he still has to go and do it. I suspect he does beat those guys, and I'm sure many of you probably agree. But yeah, it was good to see Opataya out anyway. He's very quickly becoming quite a force, and I really like watching Opataya. He's his fight against Bradis was, I don't know, I really like that fight, and Opataya's style in general, and his intensity, man. Like, a lot of people have spoken about his character. This guy, you can tell that he's the kind of guy to take it personally. I don't know if you guys know the Michael Jordan Last Dance meme, where Michael Jordan basically goes through like his career and talks about some of the rivalries had. And he was, I took it personally. At that point, it was personal. With Opataya, it seems like that's the case. Like, he wants to go in there and hurt you if you're in his way. But he does so with quite a bit of precision and skill, which is good. Completely flattened Zorro with a left hand. It was really just like easy money for him, but it really was just levels at that point. We got G-Man in the house with a super chat. Oh man, thank you, G-Man. I appreciate that. Lovely €5.99. I appreciate that, man. What did you think? I haven't had a chance to see anybody's reviews because I watched the whole card and then I just crashed, and now I'm here doing the live stream. But yeah, G, I hope you're doing well, mate. Merry Christmas, and thanks for the super chat. Hope you can stick around for a bit. Yeah, Reese says, so intense. He is. Like, you can just see it in Opataya's eyes. Even with the Thompson fight, some of you guys may remember the way Opataya was looking at Eddie Hearn in the post-fight interview, and you'd think that Opataya was going to go after you thought that Opataya was going to go after Hearn the way he was looking at him. G-Man says, enjoyed the card, mate. Dubois impressed me in Wilder. Stick a fork in him. Yeah. No spoilers because I still got to give my opinion, but yeah, I see what you mean. Next fight, because I'm going off of BoxRec, so the fights aren't in order here. But I think the next fight was Makhmudov versus Ajit Kabayel. Big upset. I think it's fair to say. Ajit Kabayel, yeah, I want to say a bit more of a known quantity because we know he's was he two-time EBU champion? But let's be real, Ajit Kabayel hasn't done anything in his career before last night, other than beating Derek Chisora. But that was ages ago. Like that was over 6 years ago, and that was the Chisora who was kind of, he had a lull in his career where he wasn't as intense, you know, and that was really just a laborious win, you know. It was like, oh wow, like Ajit Kabayel actually got it done, but you can't rest your laurels on that kind of win. Who else? You know, Kevin Johnson, who doesn't beat him these days. Pavel Sauer, same thing. So this really is Ajit Kabayel's magnum opus to date. And what a win it was, because we have Makhmudov who, yeah, like I could understand why people were getting behind Makhmudov because, you know, big guy, actually looks like a cave troll, has some pedigree. See, I knew about Makhmudov years ago because I used to see pictures of him and Beterbiev that Beterbiev would put on his Instagram, and I was like, sure, this guy can't be a real person. Like, surely this guy is grown in a lab, or he's like some kind of cardboard cutout of some Bond villain. But no, Makhmudov, I was paying attention to him. I want to say I'm trying to find. I think Makhmudov's fourth fight against Zarate, I think that was the first fight of his I saw, and I was like, boy, this guy, he will just clobber you. Excuse me, he'll just clobber you around the ring. But there was always a bit of rawness with Makhmudov. You know, he's not a complete slouch, but I didn't think he had that cutting edge at the top level of heavyweight. But nevertheless, it was interesting to see how he was going to get through. However, for me, there were some red flags in the Carlos Takam fight. Carlos Takam always comes game, you know, always a good fighter, always tries to win, but you really should be dealing with Carlos Takam by this point. And Makhmudov didn't, and I was like, you know, I'm not sure how good this guy can be. But that being said, I hold my hands up. I did not think that Kabayel would get it done. And it was nice to see at the weigh-in when he was looking up at Makhmudov, like he was getting a stern telling off, you know. But then Ajit Kabayel, to stick it on Makhmudov the way he did, he can probably take a punch upstairs, but he seems to be a bit soft to the midriff. But that being said, you know, the way Kabayel was just sinking in those body shots, he was relentless. And it's not really surprising when you have these big offensive powerhouses like Makhmudov, they don't really invest much training time into their defense because they haven't had to. But then against Kabayel, who is no offensive juggernaut, but he's someone who he certainly knows his way around a boxing ring, and he knows how to throw a punch. And he clearly had enough drive. Like, Ajit Kabayel wasn't just turning up for a payday. He probably felt like he had some kind of reputation at stake as European champion. So, you know, credit to Ajit Kabayel. Still undefeated. How old is he now? Is he like 30, 31? Okay, I thought he was in his mid-30s, so he's a bit younger than I thought. But yeah, man, credit to him. And it'll be interesting to see where he goes now. And it's certainly interesting because he was being talked about as a potential opponent for AJ. And a lot of people, including myself, kind of scoffed at the idea. But all of a sudden, Ajit Kabayel being in the mix isn't so outrageous. So yeah, that was an impressive watch though, because I was just like, what's going on? And that really set the tone for the card. I feel that, man, it was yeah, it was a good watch. So credit to Ajit Kabayel. Be interesting to see where he goes next, as well as Makhmudov, because obviously Makhmudov now is going to lose that aura of being the big bad guy, because if you stick it on him, you might be able to get him out of there, because he might just unravel and capitulate a little bit. All right, next fight, I believe, is Daniel Dubois versus Jarrell Miller. Now, this was one of the big 3 fights that I did a prediction on. Egg on my face, you know, I'm not afraid to admit when I was wrong, because I was picking Jarrell Miller to beat Daniel Dubois in round 6 or 7. I just thought that the volume of Jarrell Miller would be too much, that he'd just be, you know, he'd get too much momentum. And Daniel Dubois, I didn't think he'd be able to hurt Miller unless he like really started to tattoo him. And I just thought Miller was going to get a foothold in the fight. And you know, when Miller just uses those arm punches, but he throws so many of them and he shortens them up quite well. He uses both hands. He targets the head and the body. I thought Dubois would check out mentally more than anything. I didn't think Dubois would get sparked out. I just thought he'd probably capitulate, you know. But no, Dubois came out, and in that first round, I thought he looked $1 million. You know, he was moving well, picking his shots well, was defensively responsible. You know, for the first time, I think, in Dubois' career, I saw him shoot a right hand and then follow through, slip, and then take an exit out an angle. And I was like, damn, Dubois showing up. He did slow down a little bit. I feel Dubois, he maybe got a bit carried away trying to outstrength Miller. There's no point. The guy's nearly 100 pounds more than you. There was like over 6 stone difference. But I think Dubois' pride got to him a little bit, and he held his feet, and Miller was able to sap a little bit of his energy. But Dubois' conditioning was on point, because he'd come out after every round and he'd get energy back. And it wasn't much. It wasn't much, but it was more than what Miller was getting, because Miller, fat as a house, at that size, I don't think you're going to be very well conditioned. I mean, he made it to the last round, but of course Dubois got him out of there. But yeah, I was not picking Dubois to win. I could understand how he could win, but I didn't have much confidence in him. I thought Jarrell Miller, even off the juice, would grind him down. But no, Dubois proved a lot. I think he's been improving technically, to be honest. I think Dubois, he does lose his construct a little bit, but I think he's still growing as a fighter. But more importantly, he's getting confidence. And he said it himself. He's like, you know what? I'm gaining the confidence that I maybe lacked earlier in my career. And, you know, Dubois, I've got a lot of time for him, because he seems like a very simple character. He seems like a good guy at heart. And I don't know, it just, when he said that, I'm thinking, you know what? I think he's maturing. He's got like a level of introspection that maybe he hasn't had before, just because of his, you know, his makeup. But yeah, really impressed with Daniel Dubois' performance. As I say, technically there were some improvements, but more so he showed grit, you know, because it wasn't easy for him in there. There were times where he looked dog tired, and so was Miller. But Dubois just had that bit extra, you know, he was able to pull out a bit more. And he didn't just rest, you know, because you could probably get the vibe that he was ahead on the scorecard, but he didn't just rest on that. He was, I'm just going to see this fight out now. He stuck it on Miller. Miller, a guy's been trying to bully him all week, and really getting away with it, because, you know, Dubois is not the best talker. Obviously shoving Dubois at the weigh-in, and Dubois stuck it on him. So it was good to see Dubois kind of blossom in that sense. And I think this will do wonders for his career, because this was make or break for Dubois. You know, I said in my pre-fight video how this was a crossroads fight, because Dubois is he has a lot to prove, you know, after the Alexander Usyk fight. And Miller, of course, you know, just trying to show that he's actually decent when he's not on the multivitamins. But yeah, Dubois really pulled it out the bag, man. So good on him. Jarrell Miller, where's he gonna go now? Because he's he was quite magnanimous in defeat. Give him credit. For a guy who talks so much rubbish, he was like, you know what, Dubois, he's a real one. He proved me wrong. But where's Miller going to go from now? Because it's not like he's exactly popular. And is he really that much of a big name? Maybe he'll just start fighting in the States, on undercards, making a steady cash flow. Who knows? But yeah, it's interesting to see where Dubois goes. Yeah. So credit to Dubois. He pulled it out the bag. All right, let's catch up some comments in between. Reese hasn't seen too much of Caballero. I was quite surprised. Yeah, I mean, I've seen like a fair bit of Caballero. Never been particularly impressed by him, but last night he really pulled it out as well. And yeah, he exposed Makhmudov. He showed like, okay, yeah, this guy's big and scary, but he's not the toughest guy physically or mentally. You sink a couple of body shots into him and you can probably have your way. 286 projects, excellent card last night. AJ looks mentally stronger than he has done in a while. Dubois performed well. Yeah. I agree 100%. Miller, heavy bag with hands. Yeah, Miller did look really sluggish. And yeah, you can stick it on him, he's not particularly difficult to find. I gave Miller credit because I what I've seen of him is generally in the beginning of a fight, he can usually start off quite well, but then his defense gets a bit worse over the course of a fight. But yeah, last night, really poor stuff from Miller. But it's because he was in and with a guy who wasn't just going to stand in front of him. He was going to work him. And yeah, maybe Miller's not that great after all, when he's not juiced up to the gills. Guys, I'm just going to quickly check because I'm still getting this connection warning. Are we all good? I'm assuming that if my audio was sucking, that you guys would let me know. But yeah, if one of you guys could just say in the chat whether audio is fine or whatnot, because I can always move to another room, see if the connection's better. But if not, then I'll stay where I am. Luis asked Wilder versus Miller. Well, Miller's a sitting duck. And if Dubois is tagging you like that, then I think Wilder is going to clean you out. And you really have to look at Miller's attitude towards Wilder, because Miller doesn't trash talk Wilder. And if he does, it's nowhere near as much as he trash talks other fighters. But, there was this rumor. Well, I guess, is it even a rumor anymore that Wilder basically gave Miller the Alabama slammer in sparring and sent him to the hospital with concussion? I tend to believe that because the way Miller acts towards Wilder, Miller actually he backed Wilder to beat AJ, and it's like he kind of tries to encourage him. He's like, oh yeah, Wilder's going to beat your ass, blah, blah, blah. It's not even going to be close. But then it's like Miller doesn't have that same energy, like backing himself against Wilder, it seems. So, yeah, I tend to think that Wilder has probably cleaned Miller out in sparring in the past, and I'd pick him to do so in a professional ring. Mike said, big up Outmatch, hope you're well, man. Damn heavyweight boxing. Yeah, it's crazy. Got so many predictions wrong, but that's why we love heavyweights. Yeah, exactly. I like getting predictions wrong because what does that mean? It subverts your expectations. Mike asked what I made of AJ. Well, I'm going to get to it. Mike, I don't know if you just tuned in, but I'm running through the whole card and just going to do Bivol's fight next, then Wilder Parker, then AJ Wallin. G-Man says, whole card was really good. Yeah, money well spent. When this card was announced, I was like, I'm paying for it, no doubt. I have no problems paying for this. And even now, the following morning, I'm glad I paid for it. I'm glad I made time to sit in and watch it because I was glued to the whole thing throughout. top to bottom. Sounds good. Okay, all right. Cheers, guys. Thank you for the feedback on the sound. All right, next fight. Oh, excuse me, guys. I'm just gonna clear my throat. Okay, back. All right. Dimitri Bivol versus Lyndon Arthur. Definitely a dry spell in the card, but Dimitri Bivol did his thing. He did he win every round? Pretty much every round plus a knockdown. Yeah, like I like Bivol. I do. I personally think that he is the best light heavy. I'm gonna sound a bit contrarian here, and I hope it's not true, but I personally think that the fight between Bivol and Beterbiev doesn't happen. Call it a hunch, call it a gut feeling, but I just don't see that fight happening. For whatever reason, I suspect, I could be wrong, I could be badly wrong, but I wouldn't be surprised if Callum Smith actually beats Beterbiev next month. Because in this stage of Beterbiev's career, I don't have much confidence in him. I see him as a little bit of a glass cannon. And, I had a similar feeling when it came to Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn. I did prediction videos for it. I did live streams for it. But in the back of my mind, and I remember telling some people, I just don't see it happening. When a fight gets denounced, and it just doesn't seem settled. I know that Beterbiev versus Bivol hasn't been announced, but I just can't see it happening for whatever reason. I could be wrong, but that's just my gut feeling. That aside, though, I still see Bivol as being the best at light heavy, but he's just not the guy who's going to be securing stoppages like that. He wins big, but he doesn't win dramatically big, if that makes sense. He's not like a Opataya who, even when he's in against overmatched opposition, he'll clean them out, because he's done it against Thompson, he's done it against Zorro now. Bivol, I just don't think he's a natural risk taker. And I think last night we actually saw an injection of pace from him. I think he was fighting with quite a bit of intensity, but it's all relative, He's not so intense that he's going to really go out there and and look to bomb you out. That being said, really poor stuff from Lyndon Arthur. Just give me a second. Sorry, my throat's getting quite dry. I'm really not well, guys. I'm really not well. Yeah, Lyndon Arthur he had no confidence in the run up to the fight. You could kind of see in his mannerisms. Like, I know he plays it cool, but Lyndon Arthur's such a strange guy. It's almost like he can't be bothered. He has that really kind of, I know some people would call it a laid back persona, but it's borderline lazy, like lackadaisical. He strikes me like Lyndon Arthur, whether he's in a championship boxing match or whether he's outside the shops hanging around with his friends on pedal bikes, he probably has exactly the same demeanor. There's no fire there. And I saw it in the lead up to the fight. He just, he's not much of a talker, and he just kind of like ums and ahs, oh yeah, it is what it is kind of thing. And we saw that in the fight, no real ambition. I know he tried to wing in a couple of body shots and stuff. I think he did momentarily hurt Bivol, but it doesn't amount to much, and it was really just easy peasy for Bivol. So as I say, definitely a dry spell, but got to give credit to Bivol. Like, once again, he's shutting out the opposition. Obviously, we want to see him in more fights like the Canelo fight, like the Gilberto Ramirez fight. But against overmatched opposition, which is what Lyndon Arthur was, Bivol did what he was supposed to, so I can't really complain too much. But yeah, he did his thing, defends his title. A bit of a boring fight. Definitely the most boring fight on the card. All right. Deontay Wilder versus Joseph Parker. Man, where do we start with this one? I, once again, prediction completely wrong. I picked Wilder to stop Joseph Parker in round 11. I felt like Parker early on would have the mobility, the speed to offset Wilder, keep him guessing, keep him kind of on edge. But then I thought that as Wilder got into the later stage of the fight, he would find his timing, he'd settle down, and he'd clean Parker out. And because I had that prediction, I was on the edge of my seat. I mean, it's Wilder. You're going to be on the edge of your seat anyway. But I was thinking, all right, we're round 11 now. Is he going to take him out? Is he going to take him out? Okay, no. Round 12, he's going to take him out now. Joseph Parker he deserves a pat on the back because he fought a perfect fight. I covered in the pre-fight video, Joseph Parker either has to be too close to where Wilder can't get the space for the right hand, or too far away where Wilder can't reach with the right hand. And that's exactly what he did. Parker showed that Wilder, to a large extent, is really just a right hand. Wilder had no clue. Like, you could see Wilder was thinking, he was trying to use all his go-to setups, you know, walking one way and then changing direction just to open the stance up a little bit. Trying to use an off timing just to catch the opponent off guard. And none of those worked because Joseph Parker followed a disciplined plan. It wasn't fought at a massively high pace, but you could see Parker very well prepared. He was super sharp. You know, there was one instance, I think it might have been early mid rounds, where Joseph Parker made Wilder miss by a whisker, just turned his head out the way. It was about an inch or two away from landing on Parker. And that happened on a couple of occasions, actually. So Parker was razor sharp. Parker actually addressed a couple of the frustrations I've had with him over the course of his career. I've never rated Parker when he's on the front foot, you know, when he's having to close down a taller guy and close the distance. Parker's always fallen into a rut of, you know, kind of, he'll be on the back half of his stance, coming forward, flashing a quick jab and launching over a big right hand, always missing, falling in, getting held. There was a little bit of the big overhand rights, but he made them count a bit more. But look at the way Parker was coming forward, where he had that really active guard, that really dynamic stance where he was moving his head side to side, moving his hands, changing the position of his the position of his hand relative to where Wilder was. Really reading Wilder quite well. And, you know, it paid dividends, you know. I thought Wilder was going to come in and be really dangerous. Wilder coming in at 213, that is where Wilder should be. That's where he's at his most dangerous. But Joseph Parker just boxed with discipline, boxed with intelligence. The corner, I think, really set him up well. You know, they had a clear idea of what they wanted to do. Joseph Parker executed it. He didn't do anything stupid. He wasn't trying to be a hero. But at the same time, he wasn't just picking and poking his rounds, you know, or just doing enough. He was the aggressor. He was the ring general, Joseph Parker. And so Deontay Wilder, he can't even use the excuse of, oh, Parker was a negative. Because Parker was right in front of him, but he just managed distance so well. He managed Deontay Wilder so well, completely controlled him. And I think I saw one of you guys in the comments. Yeah, Philip, Fury's resume is not looking great. And I know Fury's probably going to be celebrating because obviously Parker's his boy and whatnot, but Fury, his best win, you know, Klitschko, AJ's beating Klitschko. And yeah, you could say that, well, Fury beat Klitschko in Germany. Oh, yeah, big whoop, even though he had no choice, but obviously beat him on points. Well, Joshua was much less experienced and got knocked down by Klitschko, felt Klitschko's best punch, came back and knocked Klitschko out. And I know people say, oh, it was an old Klitschko that Joshua beat. Not really. there was like what, not even was it a year and a half difference between the first Fury fight with Klitschko and the AJ Klitschko fight. There's a year and a half difference, and in between, Klitschko was in training for the second Fury fight. So how bad was Klitschko really? Probably not that bad. I think that was actually a better version that AJ fought compared to Fury. Fury obviously beat Wilder twice in very good fashion. Some people would argue 3 times. Now, Parker has just beaten Wilder easily. You know, I'm going to use that word easily. That was not a hard fight for Joseph Parker. And Anthony Joshua stopped Otto Wallin, top of the bill, and Tyson Fury went life and death with him. So you really have to, like, styles make fights. Styles definitely make fights, but it puts things into perspective now where it's not as simple as, oh, Tyson Fury is this demigod in the heavyweight division. And everybody, if Tyson Fury can beat him, Tyson Fury is like the only guy who can beat these guys. You know, he's the only one who can beat Wallin. He's the only one who can beat Wilder. He's the only one that can beat Klitschko. No, doesn't work like that. Tyson Fury, to use his own saying, is just another bare bum in the shower. Or is that Peter Fury? One of the Furies said that. Tyson Fury is a great fighter, but he's not head and shoulders above the rest, not in my opinion. This is a very stacked, very strong heavyweight division, and they're all going to trade wins and losses. Okay. I know you guys understand that, but it really irks me because for so long, Tyson Fury has been like held on a pedestal. And look, Tyson Fury is doing great things. He's a fantastic fighter, but let's not pretend that he's invincible. You know, let's not pretend that he's this god amongst men, because he's not. He's a fighter, and he has strengths and he has weaknesses, just like every other fighter. And if Tyson Fury fights the best available opposition consecutively, he will lose. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what happens in high-level boxing. But let's not pretend otherwise. Just going to come to Crimson's comment because it's on Parker's fight. Parker has really frustrated me in the past. Very impressed with him this time around. Big props to Andy Lee. Parker is building back better with every fight. Wilder was tentative as hell. Yeah, credit to Parker. Like you, Crimson, been very frustrated with Parker in the past. But I've always had a certain amount of respect for Parker, because if you look at what he's done, fought AJ away from home in a unification, no hesitation. Straight after that, fights White away from home, no hesitation. Fights Joe Joyce, no hesitation. Fought Wilder, no hesitation. And yeah, he's only won one of those fights. Almost beat Dylan White, but you got to like really take hats to Joseph Parker, because this is a guy who's not afraid to get in the ring. I know his heart does kind of lack in those real kind of down to the wire moments. He just is a bit passive sometimes. But hey, man, the proof's in the pudding. This guy gets in the ring against some of the best opposition with no hesitation. And last night, he really made it work against arguably one of the biggest punchers of recent years. So, you know, big respect to Joseph Parker. Really made it work. You know, that was a great synergy between fighter and trainer, and yeah, pulled it out of the bag. Excuse me. So I'm not sure if I really have anything left to say on this one. Wilder, surprisingly magnanimous in defeat, but we'll still see how long that lasts. Where does he go from here? You know, 38, not looking great. You know, it's not like, it really just highlighted Wilder's limitations, you know, because he didn't really land anything of note last night. And I don't think Wilder looks washed up. I don't think he looks washed up. I thought he looked really sharp, because even though his timing was slightly off and he was just missing, did you see the velocity on that right hand? I know power's the last thing to go, but Wilder, I don't think he's washed up, is what I'm trying to say. I think he's still got some left in the tank, but he just runs out of ideas. He just runs out of ideas. I think it's that simple. And He's going to have to regroup quite a bit. But another thing is, Wilder's personality is very different these days. I don't think he's the bronze bomber anymore in terms of personality. I think he's very much just Deontay Wilder, and that's maybe okay because he's a bit more bearable, ever so slightly. But I just don't think he's got that real fire in him. Like, even in the post-fight interview, he was just kind of like, oh yeah, I'm fortunate that I have loads of other things to focus on outside of boxing. I don't think Wilder's going to be boxing for much longer, to be honest. And how confident is he going to be should an AJ fight still be on the table? Because he's been someone who's been talking a hell of a lot, but he's just been served like a cold dish of reality. But Philip, maybe the inactivity probably did play a role. Let's be real. Like, he's fought one round in the past 2 years, but that's if Wilder is as autonomous as he always made out. Because remember when the AJ fight fell through in like 2019 or like late 2018, and Wilder was making out as if Joshua was like some puppet for DAZN and Wilder was this free spirit and he's his own man. Well, if you're your own man, why didn't you fight more often? Wilder is deluded. Let's be real. He is deluded, and maybe that's held him back a little bit. But at the same time, maybe that delusion, that bronze bomber mindset, is what's gotten him this far, despite his technical limitations. But this was an engaging fight while it was lasting, like in the moment. But it's not one I'm going to revisit because nothing really happened. It was just Joseph Parker cancelling out Deontay Wilder. Still not perfect from Parker. I think he could maybe be a bit more accurate with his shots. I feel like he maybe just lost his composure a little bit when he hurt Wilder for that split second, because he backed Wilder up into the corner, landed some good shots, but also it was a little bit wide. But Parker, he's only 31 himself. He's going to be on the up and up, and great bounce back, because let's just cast our minds back to September last year when Parker got flattened by Joe Joyce. So, heavyweight boxing is snakes and ladders, snakes and ladders. You can be on the ascendancy one moment, then you're right back to square one in one fight. But let's get on to the main event. I'm just going to get a sip of water first. Anthony Joshua versus Otto Wallin. Could you say AJ's back? I think it's safe to say that if he's not back entirely, he's mostly back. I was very impressed with Anthony Joshua in this fight. Prediction I didn't get entirely wrong. I thought AJ was going to stop Otto Wallin in the way he did, but I thought it'd come later. I was thinking around 9 or 10. I thought that Wallin, after talking so much, I thought Wallin would, try and see out as much of the fight as he could. But his corner, they told him, don't be a hero, which I understand. I get it, because the one word I think of when I describe this fight is a dissection. From the opening bell, Anthony Joshua really was just picking him apart. It didn't take Joshua long at all to line up some laser right hands. It was methodical, but it wasn't labored. It was Joshua taking his time, not necessarily taking any risks, but at the same time, he was kind of getting that low-hanging fruit, those right hands to the body, sinking them in. Otto Wallin, he's got a reputation as being a bit of a tough guy, but he's never been in with someone with the power or the precision of Anthony Joshua. Maybe Tyson Fury is a bit heavier a puncher because he's a bigger guy than Joshua, but AJ doesn't get credit for how correctly he punches. He's a 6'6" heavyweight, but look how AJ coordinates his punches. His short punches, his long punches. There's a sharpness to them that Tyson Fury doesn't have. And Otto Wallin against Tyson Fury was really aggressive, And I said in my pre-fight video that I suspect Otto Wallin was aggressive against Tyson Fury because he didn't respect Tyson Fury's offense. Because Fury's not really renowned as a big puncher, but especially in 2019, before Fury had knocked out Wilder twice, before he had knocked out Dillian Whyte, nobody saw Fury as a puncher. And so Wallin probably had that in his mind. So, no, I'm going to stick it on this guy. Whereas AJ, even though his confidence is not there, he's always been known as a good finisher and a good puncher with both hands. And so Wallin, you could see that he wasn't as audacious in this fight, and Joshua just picked him apart, completely. I know there were a couple of moments where AJ maybe caught a left to the body himself or a jab, but AJ, his face was like a mask of concentration. You could see the determination in his eye. He knew what he wanted to do, and he was going to find a way to do it. And now it's still not the AJ of 2015 where he's goading and sticking his tongue out, but I don't see that as a bad thing because, yeah, that AJ was fun and he was getting stuck in. He was like, you know what? I'm the lion in the lion's den and I'm going to tear you apart. But I think he's got a different mindset now where he's trying to be a professional, you know? He's trying to be a professional boxer, not necessarily a professional fighter. And maybe, you know, for better or for worse, we don't know. We have to see in retrospect. But I think AJ, he's just changed as a person. You could say maybe he's just matured, but I think the way he looked last night, I think it's a good sign. I think the entire build-up, fight week, I thought AJ looked really comfortable. He looked determined. He looked like he was fully focused on Wallin. And he went in there and did the business. This was the kind of fight where there's really not that much to write home about. The stoppage wasn't dramatic. It was actually a very weird atmosphere because it was so quiet in the arena. And yeah, Wallin was just taking a steady beating, didn't come out for one of the rounds. I was like, okay, fight's over. I don't know about you, but I'm going to bed kind of thing. But I think at that point, maybe all of us had experienced a bit of an adrenaline dump after the rest of the card. But yeah, really impressed with Joshua. Looked sharp. I was not so keen on him coming in at 251 pounds, but to his credit, Joshua's come in the 250s. Obviously 251 against Wallin, 250 against Hellenius, 255 against Franklin. I was never a big fan of Joshua coming in at the 250s, but it looks like he can handle it. I know these fights haven't been fought at a great pace, but stamina doesn't really seem to be an issue. Like even in the Hellenius fight, wasn't fought at a fast pace, but Joshua was still getting his nose bludgeoned. You know, he still had blood coming out of his nose and his mouth. That kind of thing can make you panic. But AJ, he keeps calm mentally now. Doesn't look like he's a deer in the headlights. Doesn't look like a victim. You know, he looks like a guy who's in there to do business. And I think, you know, AJ, like, let's assume that the Wilder fight's on the table. You know, you're only as good as your last fight. I've never liked the Wilder fight for AJ from a stylistic perspective. I just think it's a difficult fight for AJ to navigate. He can absolutely win it 100%, but I think this is probably AJ's best opportunity to win the Wilder fight. But will it happen next? I don't know. We have to see. Yeah, I think AJ is definitely he's how can I say it? He's on that rehabilitation process and he's getting the most out of it, you know. And you got to give credit to AJ because he's been willing to take a pay cut to fight 3 times a year, which is exactly what he needed. He needed activity against a lower level of opposition. It's what a lot of people have been calling for, and AJ did it. So he's taking his rehabilitation very seriously. And I personally think that AJ does have untapped potential. I honestly think that. After the Hellenius fight, because I know some people are going to call me out, they're going to say, oh, but outmatch You were slating AJ after the Hellenius fight. Yeah, I was. But that was based on the context of who Hellenius was as a fighter, the level he was. And let's not forget that initially, AJ was supposed to fight Deontay Wilder last night. It wasn't supposed to be Otto Wallin. Around the Hellenius fight, they were talking about Wilder. And that was a completely different story, a completely different proposition. But because AJ didn't go ahead with that Wilder fight, because obviously it wasn't made, he has time. There's more time for the rehab process. And that's what he needed. And so I think while AJ has a better chance now of reaching that untapped potential and actually, maybe even surpassing the level he got to before. Who knows? Time will tell. But yeah, very impressed with him nevertheless. Otto Wallin didn't really do anything in the fight. I expected him to last a bit longer and maybe take a few more risks given all the talk. But hey, talk is cheap and the proof is in the pudding. And Otto Wallin wasn't as confident as he made out. And yeah, gets taken out. All right, let's address some comments. I'm sure they've been building up a little bit. Right, Philip, I think this is where I got up to last. Do you reckon the Saudis could make a fight happen between Bivol and Beterbiev? Yeah, I don't think the money that both guys would be expecting, I don't think that'd be a problem for the Saudis. But how long? See, with Bivol, I see him staying undefeated. I see him remaining champion for a bit longer. Beterbiev, I don't. Because, yeah, Beterbiev's, he's got skills and he's got monstrous power, like mutant power. But he's older. He's injury prone. I don't think he's got the best punch resistance. His defense can lack sometimes. Don't be surprised if Callum Smith beats Beterbiev. That's my opinion. Definitely. But I reckon, like, in theory, I reckon that the Saudis could make that fight. Crimson says Klitschko was better in the AJ fight, trained harder because he was. Yeah, I personally believe that. I think the version of Klitschko that AJ fought was better for a few reasons, even though he was older by a year and a half. Like it's funny how there are all these adages in boxing and these sayings like, "Oh, heavyweights last longer," but Klitschko was washed up by the time AJ fought him. I just don't buy it. I agree. And yeah, you can say, "Oh well, Fury beat Klitschko with less resistance away from home." Yeah, credit to Fury for doing that, but he was also more experienced than AJ. And I know people makes a big song and dance of Fury doing it away from home. Fury had no choice. He was a WBO mandatory, I believe. And at that point, the only person in that kind of time frame, or the only people who didn't fight Klitschko in Germany, Alexander Povetkin, because he had a massive Russian promotional powerhouse behind him, and Bryant Jennings. Everyone else had to do it. And yeah, Fury did, he did what he was supposed to, but for how long can you kind of ride the wave of one win, And yeah, Fury has beaten Wilder in very good fashion twice. And Dylan White, I gave Fury credit for that Dylan White fight, but these are guys who have been beaten by other fighters as well. Philip says, I always thought Usyk beats Fury. Yeah, I do as well. Spoilers, I think Usyk beats Fury, and I always have done. And it's nothing against Fury. Fury's an amazing fighter with some, Fury's got some tremendous qualities, and he is a fantastic fighter. But I just don't see him dominating everyone like his fanboys think. I think Usyk beats him. Like, I do. And maybe I'll see something and lead up to the fight that changes my opinion. But for now, I'm going with Usyk. Crimson says, so glad the Saudis are paying fighters to fight each other so we can actually see what people's levels are compared to the rest of the division. Yeah. And look, a lot of people, they take like this moralistic stance of, I don't want Saudi involvement in sport because have you seen the way people get treated? Oh, slave labor. All right, I get it. But firstly, don't pretend that Saudi Arabia or any of these countries are like more insidious than any other country on the planet. Like every country has controversy. Every country has, lacks morals. Yeah, you have to kind of see beyond that. And people think that this kind of thing is going to ruin boxing. How can it ruin boxing when you're right? You have fighters who have certain demands. Promoters like Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren in isolation can't meet those demands. And so there has to be a solution. That solution is more money. If the Saudis are willing to pay, then who cares? Because then the fights get made. Excuse me. A lot of people had criticism for this card by saying, oh, it's not AJ versus Wilder. How are they getting all the fighters on the same card, but they're not fighting each other? I get that. The card wasn't perfect, but it was good. But more than anything, it sets a precedent. Because, all right, we get this at the end of 2023, and we're supposed to get Fury versus Usyk in the beginning of 2024. What happens after that? It sets a precedent of getting rival promoters to work with each other with a massive injection of finance that actually goes to where we want to see it. It wasn't like DAZN where, I can't remember the guy's name, the head of DAZN, he gave Eddie Hearn like an extra £1 billion or whatever, $1 billion. And we didn't really see much of that. DAZN's lineup's been fairly weak. With this, we're seeing real tangible results in great cards. Like nobody can look me in the eye this morning and say that they didn't have a great time last night, because that's a lie. It was a great card, and it should be hopefully a sign of things to come. And yeah, if it takes money, it takes money. I suspect, I've said this before, I suspect that the Saudis who are kind of fronting up the costs, I think they're genuine boxing fans. I know they have their fingers in other pies like music and stuff like their concerts and other attractions out for Riyadh season. But I suspect that these guys fronting the cost, these princes, these kings, whatever, I don't know who they are, forgive my ignorance. I suspect that they are genuine boxing fans who look at the state of boxing and, like us, they're fed up of fights not being made or taking ages to be made. And like, you know what? If we want these fights to be made, we've got to do it ourselves. We've got to bring these promoters together, one room, show them a heap of cash and say, look, you can be a part of this or you can be outside in the cold looking in. But we want these fights to happen, make them happen. And now you start to see fights like this happen, cards like this happen. And all of a sudden, fighters aren't making demands other than, oh, let me on the card. I want to be on the card. Come on, give me the call. That's what's going to happen. There's not going to be any more diva-ish behavior. Oh, who's this guy? What network is he fighting on? Blah, 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 blah. What does he bring to the table? It's no, get me on the card. I want to be on this card. I'm willing to fight someone to be on this card. So I sound like I'm raving a bit, but I think it's exciting times ahead. I genuinely do. Oh, there we go. Bit of a delay. Answered that. G-Man says, it was nice seeing Joshua beat up Wallin, not going to lie, especially after... Yeah, Wallin's a strange character. Like, he obviously proved that he's a bit of an NPC and a bit of a normie, but he's also a guy who you could tell, like, speaking of, like, riding the wave of one performance, maybe in a different state or a different country, he could have beaten Fury. That cut was awful, but he didn't. He gave Fury a good fight, but he was really kind of just really riding on the coattails of that victory. And obviously, Wallin, he talks a lot. Like, he was just belittling AJ, and made out he was so confident. And I've got tapes of sparring. I've got the AJ spars on tape. Whatever, like that means something. Bro got picked apart. So yeah, and it's no like allegiance towards AJ, but it's like, if you're going to talk as much as Wallin does and you're going to act the way he acts, you better back it up. But he didn't. Wayne McCleary asks, how is Fury a heavier puncher than AJ? Well, what I mean is Fury's a bigger guy, no? He's a couple of inches taller. He's heavier than AJ. So he's probably got more weight behind his shots, you know? That's all I mean by that. But AJ's a knockout puncher because he's more precise, he's more explosive. Yeah, Fury, I wouldn't say Fury is a puncher, but he's a big guy who, if he landed clean on your chin, probably would take you out just by virtue of the fact that he's pretty enormous. Yeah, Wallin, he got overexcited with the talk. Should AJ stick with Ben Davison or go back to Derek James? I was a little bit critical of, well, I wasn't critical. I was questioning AJ's decision to go to Ben Davison. And there were some people who were like, AJ's only with Ben Davison because Derek James is training pretty boy, what's his name? Ryan Garcia. And I was like, I don't buy that. So you mean to tell me that Derek James can't train AJ because he's training Ryan Garcia? I don't buy that. I think AJ was looking for a new influence in Ben Davison, who it sounds like he's familiar with, because there's a lot of talk about how they've actually had a bit of correspondence for a while now. Personally, if we compare the Franklin fight and Hellenius fight with obviously Derek James, in this fight with Ben Davison, I'd say stick with Ben Davison, to be honest. And I rate Ben Davison. I think he's a young guy. He's maybe not as experienced, but he's a learner. You know, he's an open-minded guy. He's analytical. He's willing to learn from other people. And I feel like Ben Davison's done a great job, particularly with like Lee Wood, for example. And I think the personality of Ben Davison, it matches the personality of AJ. AJ's an overthinker and Ben Davison's an analyst. But I think Ben Davison has enough tact to only give AJ the information that he needs. And so there's no paralysis by analysis. It's, okay, AJ, he's doing this, we do this. AJ takes that in and he executes it. So I really like this partnership. And if I had to pick, I'd say AJ, stick with Ben, to be honest. Because Wallin, yeah, styles make fights, but Wallin's he's more capable than or he's of a higher caliber than Hellenius, and I'd say maybe just a bit better than Franklin, because I actually think Franklin's pretty decent. So yeah, that's my pick. I'd say stay with Davison. Wayne says the way AJ looks now is someone who's now an experienced heavyweight who's managed to get the right balance of defense. Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree, Wayne. I think that's a great way of putting it. There's a balance there. That's the thing, you know. And maybe it's not going to be as explosive as it once was. Maybe if AJ gets a stoppage, it's going to be this kind of slightly slower paced, less dramatic, but it's going to be of higher quality, you know. Because let's be real, AJ provided us with thrills and spills. You know, look at the way he took out Klitschko. Look at the way he took out Povetkin. The first Andy Ruiz fight. But now, yeah, we're not going to get that same X factor, but he's going to be a better fighter now. He's going to be more well-rounded. And I think it's a natural part of the evolution, you know. You suffer losses, some losses harder than others, but you got to regroup, you got to evolve your style, and you got to mature, you know. I think that's what AJ is now. AJ's a veteran. Look at his resume, you know. Look at the title fights, the names that AJ's been in with. You can't scoff at that. This guy still has the best resume in the heavyweight division. You know, for all his faults, for all his shortcomings, you can't take that away from him. And it looks like he's still getting better as well. So credit to him. It's going to be exciting to see how he continues to develop and how he performs in other matchups. Excuse me. Davison's the right fit for him. Definitely a fixture now in the camp. Yeah. More than anything, I just want to see consistency now. Maintain a high level of activity. consolidate that relationship with Davison. That's what I think is the best course of action. We got JD. He says, "Yo, got in here pretty late, but oh well." Hey, no problem. We're going to go for maybe like 5 more minutes. I'm just going to read these comments, and then we're going to call it a day. But JD, at least you get to catch some of it. So it's good to have you here, buddy. Do I think Wilder's done? Physically, no. I think he actually has, a little bit left in a few more miles left on the clock. I don't think he's spent, but mentally, I don't think his head is where it needs to be. I think he's just a bit too placid, That's just my opinion. And obviously, he has technical limitations. And I think with this placid nature, his technical limitations can be exploited a bit more. Just my opinion, could be wrong, but I think it's like kind of swings and roundabouts with Wilder. It depends how you cut it, where you look at it from. Although it's not a great style matchup for him, I've always believed AJ would beat Wilder. Best name Wilder has beaten 50-year-old Ortiz. Wilder can't beat any elite heavyweight. Yeah, I understand that. Like, AJ definitely has the tools to splatter Wilder. That right hand that Parker hit Wilder with last night, if that was AJ, Wilder wouldn't have been standing, or he would have been badly hurt, where AJ probably would have been able to follow up. But I don't know, like, for the longest time, I just felt like the way Wilder fights, it would have, I don't know, I feel like the matchup would have just favored Wilder a bit more. But yeah, Wilder he's still got a lot to prove, This was, if he would have beaten Parker, that would have been the best win on his resume, because Ortiz is one of the most, not just his record, but his reputation as well. Once upon a time, Ortiz looked like he was going to be a player in the division because he beat Brian Jennings. Nothing came off of that. He's beaten a couple of fringe contenders, some like decent guys, but obviously Andy Ruiz, a former champion, but Ortiz he's never staked his claim in the division. He's never done anything to say, I'm the man, And so how long is Wilder going to get credit for that win? And even then, people talk about how hard the Ortiz fights were for Wilder. I never bought that. Yeah, they were tricky. They were kind of rough in spots, but I never got this opinion that people have of the fights where Ortiz was, so far ahead and Wilder was being dominated. Yeah, Ortiz might have been winning on points, but both fights, I never saw Wilder being like completely up against it. Oh, it completely changes the run of play. That's just my opinion, but I think that's a byproduct of people gassing up Wilder and trying to inflate his wins, and by proxy, inflating Ortiz as like some kind of boogeyman. Wilder looks uninterested in the ring, seems to have lost his killer instinct. Scott is an ish trainer. He just feeds Wilder's delusional mentality. I don't know. I kind of like Malik Scott. I think he's no Mark Breland, I'll say that. But I don't think he's terrible. I think it's just Wilder maybe fizzling out a little bit. Wilder's not an even keel type guy. He's usually an extreme character. But where he is now a bit more mellow, I think it's a sign of him just kind of being a bit jaded mentally more than anything. And maybe he needs to lay off the jungle juice, because maybe his mind's just been blown and he's transcended boxing. You know the meme where it's like, the brain activity meme. And it's like, oh, you start to transcend humanity and you become awake. He's just like, his mind has just expanded so much that the trivial world of boxing is of no concern to him now. And he craves a deeper understanding of the universe. Maybe that's what it is. Boxing fans should just worry about the fights itself and other things that affect boxing, not the country the events take place in. Saudis, in fact, yeah, I think it is really good. The only caveat I'd say is I hope that boxing goes to other countries, because boxing for a long time was in the UK. Before that was obviously a lot in the States. I don't want it to be, all these big fights are going to be taking place in Saudi Arabia. Particularly when there's a world champion, I want to see world champions fight around the world. I know logistically that might not be. Hold on. Sorry, just had to clear my throat again. I know logistically that might not be entirely possible because different countries, different economies, different views on boxing, blah, 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 different markets. But I don't want it to be, okay, Saudi is the new home of boxing. It only takes place there. I want to see things move around a little bit. I personally, it's a weird quirk I have, but I love seeing boxing take place in different stadiums across the world. Like in August when Usyk fought Dubois in Poland in that stadium, I thought it was great. You see different settings, different fans, different environments. It keeps things fresh. Not every time the O2 or every time the Barclays Center or every time T-Mobile Arena. It becomes very formulaic, very samey. I want to see new venues. I want to see new fan bases, that kind of thing. I want boxing to be a world tour, if that makes sense. So I think Saudi influence is great in boxing. I just don't want it to be restricted to only the Middle East. Do you favor Joshua over Wilder based on how? Yeah, ever so slightly. Wilder's still dangerous because, Parker, he's not as big as Joshua, so he's a smaller target. But I think if Joshua could maybe mimic the way that Parker fought, use that same kind of, management, like be too far away to get hit, or too close to get hit clean, I think he can. I think he could probably one up Parker and stop Joshua, stop Wilder. Because that's the thing is, even though Joshua's bigger than Parker, Joshua shortens his shots up. His shots are much more compact than Parker's, and he's a harder puncher. As I say, if that was Joshua's right hand that landed on Wilder, Wilder would have been on Queer Street. He would have been all over the shop. Callum Redford says Wilder just can't box and that's his downfall. Yeah. And I know some people are probably going to ask, why didn't Wilder learn to box? Wilder has certain skills, but he's invested all of his training points, all of his XP into that right hand and setting it up. And some guys, they just don't have the coordination, And it sounds like a cop-out. It sounds like it's so simple, but we all have strengths and weaknesses. And boxing, technical boxing, it requires a lot of dexterity of body and mind. And Wilder probably just doesn't have that. I train a lot of athletes, and I have to analyze the way they move on the court, in the gym. And I want to say it's somewhat rare, but sometimes you come across even young athletes who are, they haven't experienced like their peak height velocity, that kind of thing. And they have terrible movement quality and terrible coordination, even just like forget moving weight, forget performing fast actions, even just getting them to kind of navigate through space. They can't do it. I can think of one girl in particular who I train, and her movement is just terrible. Lovely girl, and a very talented athlete in other senses, but when it comes to just movement quality and being coordinated, she moves like a bag of spanners. And no surprise that she gets injured fairly regularly. So yeah, like she can't even extend her arms straight ahead of her. There's like one arm will be off kind of thing. It's just it's bizarre. But so, some people are just they're built different and not necessarily for the better. Wallin should have carried on a bit longer against Joshua, considering he's chatting so much. I mean, that would be our expectation, but he had not even one iota of success. So Um, I can't really say, like, I'm not going to say, oh, Wallin, like, get back out there, and because that fight was only going one way. Let's be real. Uh, it was it was one way traffic. So it's kind of like egg on Wallin's face, but I'm not going to hold it against him. Like, just lick your wounds, try come back better, and improve in the gym. Don't talk so much rubbish next time. That would be my advice. Um, me, outmatch boxing, the philosopher. What do I think of AJ as a person? You know what? AJ is uh, AJ has been. I have time for AJ. Okay, not because I think he deserves credit for his achievements and what he's done, particularly for British boxing. But AJ, I feel like I resonate with him a little bit, or he resonates with me, because I feel like I can understand what he's going through, because he's an overthinker. He's an overanalyzer. He's someone who's prone to paralysis by analysis. I feel like despite his achievements, despite the fact he's a grown man, probably he doesn't have that same kind of self-identity that someone like Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury, he is what he is, and he knows what he is. And for a long time, he didn't really pretend to be anything else. Tyson Fury started to tone it down a little bit when he became mainstream. With AJ, I think, we're on different life journeys, and I feel like I understand a bit more of what he's going through, because he's still trying to find exactly who he is, and I kind of felt for him, because it must, and this is just my assumption, I know everyone psychoanalyzes him and scrutinizes his behavior, but it's just the vibe I get. I think a lot of it comes from indecision. Like, if you look at his outburst against Alexander Usyk after the rematch, AJ was all over the shop a little bit, because it was like he wanted to be mad and, go just berserk in the ring. But at the same time, he's like, hip, hip, hooray for Alexander. It was just all over the shop. And I feel like that kind of emotion was unfiltered. That was completely raw. And it showed that even when this guy is like just acting on pure instinct and emotion, he's still like neither coming nor going. Like, he doesn't know where he is. So, AJ is what he is. He's his own man. Like, I'm not out here trying to cape for him or anything like that. He's a grown man doing his thing, making a shed load of money. I don't get anything out of that. I just talk about it. But as an observation, I think AJ is learning about himself more than he's learning about boxing, if that makes sense. But just my opinion, complete stranger on the internet. What's next for Parker? I think a fight with Zhang makes sense. Yeah, why the hell not? Have a little triangle go on. Zhang completely splatters Joyce after Joyce did the same to Parker. Bring it on. I'd love that fight. Maybe, I was going to say maybe on the undercard of Fury versus Usyk. Nah, that turnaround's probably a bit too soon. If that fight was like a month or two later, in March or April rather than February, I'd say, yeah, I'd expect to see that card on the undercard, or that fight on the undercard, but probably not. But yeah, definitely, I'd love to see that fight. What I make of Andy Ruiz being there? He's probably just angling for a fight. Like, Andy Ruiz, when did he even last fight? Was that May last year? Andy Ruiz is, what's this guy doing, man? What is he doing? Yeah, he's probably just angling for a fight, Like, do you remember after the Joshua rematch, he was like, oh, yeah, I want that third fight. I want that third fight. And the crowd was like, nah, not after this one, mate. Not after this one. Oh, so it was last September he fought Ortiz. And then the May before that, in 2021, he fought Chris Arreola. So what's Ruiz after? You know, like, go out there and do something. I think he's just kind of hanging about for a big money fight, you know, like a kind of typical PBC fighter. He's sitting on the shelf. JD, I'm recovering. It feels like every day I get 5% better. And I'm usually someone with a very good immune system. Like, I get ill once every 2 years, and it's usually just with a standard cold, and I'd be ill for actually a day. Whereas with this, it's been like over a week. So it's like really taking its time to clear up. But hey, man, it could be worse. You know, some people are really hard up with bad health. So I can't complain. I'm a young guy. I will get better. It's just frustrating, you know, because I want to do videos. I want to talk, but I can't do it without like coughing up. But yeah, I am getting better. Thanks, mate, for checking in on me. Get up again. Wilder's Nigerian ancestors abandoned him in this fight. He let Nigeria down. Hey, maybe the spirits have given up on him. Wilder needs to stand and trade, let his hands go. Yeah, Wilder needed to roll the dice. He was just too timid. But I think it's because he knew that Parker wasn't there. You know, he couldn't just throw that shot for the sake of it, because Parker's would have come back. Hatman stated in his Wilder Parker post-fight video that Malik Scott said Wilder's more ability than Ali. He's a decent trainer, but weirdo. Well, I think that was him trying to get the best out of Wilder. I don't think Wilder's a guy who you need to ground him in reality, because he's not grounded in reality. So to get the most out of him, you probably need to chuck some fuel on the fire and get him believing that he is the guy, because that's one of Wilder's strengths. That's what keeps him going, is Wilder. You can't deny, in his hardest fights, in his most grueling fights, particularly against Tyson Fury, he has heart. And he has that heart because he believes that he's better. He believes that, you know, there are external factors holding him back, you know, cheating, match fixing, egg weights and gloves. And that's what keeps him afloat. None of it's true. It's all nonsense. But it shows that Wilder's not grounded in reality. And therefore, you have to cater your coaching to that. You have to tell him, yeah, you're as great as Muhammad Ali. And as unbearable as it makes Wilder, it keeps him in the game, you know? Because, yeah, even if he loses, you still want to give him the best chance of winning. You know, it comes down to probability. But whether it amounts to anything, who knows? We'll have to see what happens next. All right, guys. I feel like I've gone on for long enough. I actually only planned to go for an hour, and we've gone for an hour and a half nearly. I actually got, I think, up to 30 viewers as well. So thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you guys all had a good night last night. It was a brilliant card. I hope you've enjoyed my review. I'm going to wrap up some presents, rest my voice, of course, gear up for Christmas. Merry Christmas to any of you guys who are celebrating. I hope you enjoy your festivities. Be safe, in the words of Ku and Cassius. Have a great time. And I'll speak to you soon, probably in the next video or next live stream. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, thanks again, guys, for joining me. And I'll catch you in the next one. So peace out for now. And I'll speak to you soon.